have awesome intro music.
That music, like every time we do one of these streams, everyone is so excited once the music starts, even if they've never heard it. Welcome to Office Hours.
It's Friday. Woohoo!
It is Friday, and normally this is the part where you, Landauer, would be talking, but not today. Today is the day that I get to interview Landauer. So the shoe is on the other foot, and as I said last night, I plan to dissect you and expose all of your parts on the internet. Wait a second. I don't think I can say it that way. Welcome to Office Hours, where we just talk with people at PEG and hang out and get to know the people behind the emails when you click a different contact link, essentially.
We're actual humans here.
We are humans. We are all humans, and definitely not lizards in human suits.
I'm a meat popsicle.
So, Landauer, what is it that you do? In case people are tuning in and have no clue who you are, what do you do at PEG?
I use my amazing powers of persuasion to get people to buy Savage Worlds. That's
D12 plus 2.
Right? Mental psionics, like buy it, buy it, buy it, buy it. So yeah, I'm the director of marketing for Pinnacle. So that's a nice direct title that says I like to do streaming. I like to throw up all the social media stuff, advertising, Kickstarter updates, game changer updates, all that fun stuff. So,
which basically means
number one Savage Worlds fan kind of deal.
Yeah, number one Savage Worlds fan. Most of my job is hanging out with Chris, which is just an awesome job to have. So
I'd say I'm like a cheerleader, but they're are much more athletic than I can be. So it would be an insult to cheerleading.
In the age of AI avatars, we are only mere minutes away from no one knowing.
I mean, I've actually brought all authentic, organic, mostly shot on film because I'm old, pictures to share. So
that's awesome. I can't wait to see some of them. And we got I'm going to just jump right into the one thing you wouldn't tell me before we started. So you and I share some similar gaming pedigree in the fact that most people we talk to are like, yeah, I got in with Redbox or I got in with, AD&D. We both started gaming with a little game called GURPS, which stands for, of course,
General Universal Role-Playing System.
There we go.
Generic
Universal.
I mean, generic is just an awful pejorative sounding word, but
right.
GURPS sounds cool. So
GURPS sounds cool. It also goes to show why you should never name your project an acronym because it will stick, right? They always plan to come up with something besides GURPS. They always plan to come up with something besides the other role-playing game, but Torg stuck and GURPS stuck. So take us back. How did you get into gaming? And GURPS was not just a game that you played, but it was also a game that you...
Well, so that's actually my first with GURPS. So my very first role-playing experience was totally AD&D.
Oh, you bastard.
I know. But the GURPS was my first publication. My name in a product was under GURPS. And
how did that come about?
So wow. So let's do the whole long story. So started AD&D in middle school, some friends, and Tim and Reese and everybody's name, Nick. So one of my friends there, Reese Gregory, we've stayed in touch, and the cool kind of come full circle of role-playing games is back in the day, Reese was a really big fan of Rifts, but he didn't ever run it for us. We always just Tim was our major game master, and we played AD&D. And but like Reese he collected all the Rifts books, and the Rifts books were always just like the covers were so different than the D&D cover. I mean, D&D was like at that point, like AD&D was very much in the Conan style of art. That's where they went with that. Like big barbarian on a horse, like fur, kind of on the cover.
Something Frazetta. Like
right?
Frazetta-esque.
Totally, right? Frazetta, there was a little more on the PG-13 versus the NC-17 end of the
That's
scale.
right, yeah.
It's totally what they were going with, like AD&D, right? And the Rifts was just doing crazy stuff. Like the covers were just like, what game is that? So never got to play Rifts as a kid, but I know Reese was always a good friend, and he always had all the books. And so it was a pleasure for me all these years later, being in the industry, getting to meet Kevin, getting to promote a Savage Worlds, Rifts for Savage Worlds line. That I sent him my employee copies of Rifts.
That's awesome.
Like, hey man, thanks for getting me into this hobby. 30 some whatever years ago. Hope you enjoy like Rifts for Savage Worlds. And so that was my nice little like, what do they call it? Like, what's that movie with the box of chocolates? You don't know what you're gonna get.
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. So you know how Forrest Gump's got that really neat little framing where it's like a little feather takes off in the first scene, and then the very last scene the feather comes back and lands on the book. That was my RPG feather. Was that
RPG feather?
Who was there when I got in the industry? Now that I actually got working in the industry, but anyways, played D&D in middle school with friends, and I thought college was going to be like high school. We all kind of like went super nerdy, and like I was a definite overachiever in high school, so didn't have as much time to play. And so I thought, hey, I want to really get back into role playing when I go to college. I'm going to be like living in the same dorm as all the I'm an only kid, so it was like didn't have the same kind of like access to board games and RPGs at home that some other people like might play with their friends or whatever siblings. So I was like, oh, it'll be so much fun. I'll have like dorm siblings and we can play role playing games. I think I played twice in college, sad to say, but came back after college, and GURPS had attracted me because I wanted to develop a game that was outside of the fantasy paradigm, and D&D is so entrenched in classes that it was just like I picked up like I wanted to do an Arabian Nights game, and Al-Qadim was D&D's kind of Arabian Nights with like elves and orcs and stuff. But I didn't really need the elves and orcs, so I bought like all of Al-Qadim. But it's just like they're really trying to jam Al-Qadim into, or jam kind of Arabian Nights fantasy into Forgotten Realms, whatever it was. And so it was funny. I had been working on that campaign on that thing for like a couple years, and I came home one summer. Actually, this would be our first picture share. So I came home one summer from college and worked in the governor's office here in Colorado. And the big project that summer was like the state was going to host this big technology summit with like the CEOs of all these big tech companies, and they were branding Colorado as the convergence corridor, which basically meant like because we have mountains to our west, if you want to run fiber optic cable to connect the whole country with high speed internet, you kind of have to pick Colorado to kind of cough Wyoming too, but if you want to go over the mountains, Colorado is like kind of we've already dug the tunnels. So the by virtue of where we are in the country to be a fiber optic hub, we were going to hold this big conference. So this was also the time when like eBay was kind of where you would go to get used RPG books. So I had like an eBay habit, and there's one book in the Al-Qadim series that I was like, oh, I'll just collect it all, because if I'm not going to be able to run it or play it, I'll just I will own all of it. And there was one book that like it was like the Shahrazad's Guide or something like that I couldn't find on eBay. If it was like $100 or more, whatever, I couldn't find it for a price I was willing to pay. But also in the days of like LimeWire, and you could find like really crappy quality PDFs of some things, and I found a copy of the PDF on before torrents, but on a file sharing site. And,
man, I haven't thought about LimeWire in like a decade.
Right, and your computer thanks you for it because you don't have like 19 viruses.
That's true.
Oh my god, the days back in the days. So the cool thing about working in the governor's office was we had really cool color duplex printers that you could print out double-sided stuff on. And so I thought I was staying after hours late enough, but apparently someone else was in the office. And I printed out the entire like Al-Qadim Shahrizar's guide on the office printer. And of course, the office printer was awesome enough to put like a cover page saying which login account was printing this out. So I checked on it halfway through, and it was like a 200-page book. And it was looking great. And I was like, oh, it's double-sided and all, it's in color. This is back when like color printing was, you wouldn't have a color printer at home. Like maybe you'd have an inkjet, but you wouldn't have a color laser at home.
Yeah.
And then I go back and it's not on the printer. And I got called in the next day at the office, and they're like, "What is this? You're spending, government resources printing out this stuff." And so it doesn't look so great because I mean this is 2001, and having Al-Qadim is awful lot like having Al-Qaeda. I mean, like those are the initial kind of connections people make in their little brains. Luckily, it was right before 9/11, so there wasn't quite that yet. But, right,
and that is why Landauer is here today.
Right? Yeah. My permanent file with the government is literally like you printing out terrorist materials on government computers.
Yeah.
But the cool thing, so even like I got some steam for wasting taxpayers' money to make my gaming habit, but there was one cool thing that came out of it, which was right, and that's why John Doom's here. So the cool thing is they at the end of that summer, just actually kind of so taking you back to 2001. So before 9/11, those of us who remember dimpled chads and all of that, there was a very contested presidential election, and the Supreme Court decided it, after Florida and a couple other states were doing their razor thin margins. It was like Bush v. Gore. And so Bush was elected president, but probably one of the weakest starts of any president in modern history because it was like, weeks and weeks and weeks of, post-election, all this drama in the courts and, all the recounts and all this kind of stuff. So to re-energize his kind of, ability to lead, the Bush campaign or the Bush White House at that point, they scheduled a Heartland tour where
I remember this.
They were going to come through the center of the country and just reinvigorate, and it turned out getting bombed on 9/11 reinvigorated his campaign, and he became a very powerful leading president. But at this point in history, there was no idea that Dick Cheney was running the country or that we were a war president. It was kind of like kind of sad trombone. And anyways, because I was one of the few kids who was interning at the governor's office that summer and had a in-state license, much to the chagrin of all the other kids who were interns, I got picked to drive in what became the longest motorcade in history, which was between, let me see where it is. So I got to be a driver and for the presidential motorcade. And this was up at the YMCA of the Rockies. That's me with hair.
With hair and no, a very trimmed beard, but a very, the intense eyes are still there.
True. Yes. And then there's some doofus to my left who's got the earpiece in. He wasn't Secret Service. He just wanted to pretend he was Secret Service. He was from the governor's office. But he just wanted to pretend he was Secret Service. So he literally brought his own earpiece, which is why it looked so horrible. Didn't even know how to put it on. So
it's actually just a twisty straw,
right? I mean, pretty much one of those oh god, the 80s. I love twisty straws; those were amazing. Yep. So that was me getting to meet the president, and it was very cool. We got to drive through the canyons all the way up to Estes, and there were attack helicopters, and they gave us the instructions of I had a senator and two representatives Tom Tancredo and Bob Schaefer and some other staff in my. It was a Dodge van, a Dodge Caravan. And we got, so after we get, you go through the Secret Service, kind of, they do your background check, and then you have to show up there really early that day, and they check your car for bombs, and they check you. And it was really fun because they gave you the instructions. They're if anybody encroaches on the roadway while you're driving, try to avoid them. But if you have to impact them, you can take them out. If they present a threat to the people in your car, you can use your car to take them out.
So you're saying Mad Max rules apply,
right? I was so we get going very fast. Motorcades do not screw around. I mean, we were clocking 80 plus miles an hour going around mountain curves in a car that's not designed to go around mountain curves. But I got to meet the president afterwards, which was pretty cool. So that was kind of fun. So, anyways, after I did not get arrested for being an Al Qaeda sympathizer for wasting government resources, finally come back to Denver and meet up with the Denver GURPS group because GURPS had the 1001 Arabian Nights book, and then they have a Rome book, and they have a Western book, and then that was my first seeing Deadlands. It was actually through the Deadlands for the GURPS books, and good lifelong friend now, Brian McCabe, was running the Denver GURPS group, and we got playing regularly with it was like a meetup.com, and in that group. I'll put the link in the chat so folks can go and spend, I think, $11. The part of my love for all things classics, like ancient Rome and Greece, we ran a gladiator scenario in GURPS, and then we found out that GURPS was doing the martial arts guides.
Yes,
and they were putting these at the time, so we got the playtest copy. And is that Brian on Facebook who forgot to actually go and say that he was?
I think so.
To give permission for Facebook to use his name. We got the playtest copy and we're like, these archetypes are crap. Our archetypes that we did for all the little gladiator types, the Murmillo, etc., are just so much better. So we sent in our prototypes going like, hey guys, maybe you want to use these statted up for GURPS instead. They're like, oh, these are great, and we're going to use them. And so they credited us with play testing, but like we basically wrote the archetypes in that volume, and that got us into like trying to be Men in Black for Steve Jackson Games, but they really wanted us to run Munchkin, and I'm like, I want to play GURPS, and that got us into the Denver convention scene, and that's how we met the Savages, because one of the guys in the group is like, hey, like Savage Worlds is like GURPS, but so much faster and easier to run, and there's these cool things called bennies, and so that got me into the Savage World scene, and the volunteer with the Rocky Mountain Savages for a good long clip, and then we helped grow the club immensely. We put on the Savage 100, we did the Savage Cruise, we did Deadwood, and that's kind of how Shane and company used to come out to those events, and so that's kind of how we got to meet them there, and I think we started my work for PEG was Hell on the High Blood Drive. We did some streaming actual play stuff for Blood Drive, and then after that they hired me on full time. So that's kind of my little trajectory through AD&D all the way to working for PEG.
That's awesome. All right, let's take a step back because are we going to get a cameo of Hannibal, or will we only see him?
Oh, so I'll run through the stuff. So like. Let's
talk, because you have a love of you are clearly in our big fight between cats and dogs.
I'm a dog.
We fall on the dog side.
Total team dogs. So that's me in diapers with my very first dog, who was much fluffier. That like I always thought he was like a big English sheepdog, but apparently he was some kind of little poodle. But that's Rags, who had been freshly shaved, and a cute little border collie puppy back when I was thin. I was like this would be like the last time you see me thin. That was Sassy, my first border collie, and then on the couch is Blackjack. So those are my childhood dogs. Love them to death. As a guy who's probably not going to have children, like dogs are definitely kind of filled that niche for me. Here's my next generation. It's like one of the dogs I had in high school. That's Bonnie, and then in the corners, the really pretty, attractive female dog. That's Celeste. We shared a birthday.
What are all of these puppies that you are holding?
So Celeste gave us those puppies. So she was a real special dog. And when I came back from college, I was really homesick for my the Blackjack, the one I was holding as a kid. We had to put him down kind of right there in college. And so not being away from home for college and not having a dog was really homesick. So I'm like, I want to get border collie first thing I do when I get home, and the whole border collie scene had really changed. Like it had gotten really political. The breed got recognized by the AKC to be like for confirmation showing, which is like the frou-frou showing, and so the working folks and the show folks had this huge split between them, and I was kind of like, well, what why is it so political now? Why is everybody angry with each other? Why can't I just find like a normal border collie? And why is everyone like, you got to pick one camp, the show or the working or whatever? And So I ended up like writing a blog called Border Wars, which is kind of inspired by the fight between the working and the show folks and border collies, and ended up almost 1 million words, I think, over the course of writing that blog. Back in those days, when a blog was the thing. I got noticed by a couple of like leading ethicists in dog breeding. There was a show called Pedigree Dogs Exposed in the UK by Jemima Harrison, and she kind of I met up with her online. It's kind of a whole group of us. Anyways, I ended up getting interviewed and having my research go towards a production of Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel, who put on a thing about dog breeding, kind of a sport and what's going on with dogs. But anyways, the very cute dogs. I decided I was gonna bring the two sides back together. I was gonna have a working dog and a showbred dog, and make puppies and have a little bit of hybrid vigor. And so we had a litter. There were 6 in the litter, and I'm holding 4 of them. But that was Celeste. She was very special. She gave us those awesome puppies. And breeding dogs is hard. Like you kind of make these like lifelong bonds with the people you sell the dogs to. And when you lose your dogs, you're also losing each one of those puppies. Kind of another reason to cry when they was there. There's one of the 6 left, and gosh, I think they're 17, 18 years old at this point. So,
oh wow.
But anyways, the rabbit picture is a cute little anecdote there. So that was so Celeste, and there's a rabbit, and we had like that was at my parents' house, and they had a yard that was pretty big, like an acre and some, and there were lots of rabbits that would hide in the bushes, and one of these days she's fast enough, she's going to catch one of these rabbits. So my dad had a massive stroke in 2009, and so he was in the hospital for months. And she was really distraught that he wasn't at home. And so when he finally came home, within 10 minutes, so we brought Dad home, and then the dogs just pounced on him. They were super glad to finally see him back at home again. But she could sense that something was off. He was still suffering the effects of the stroke, and so she disappears. And she came back 10 minutes later with that rabbit, and she walked up and put it on his lap, like, oh, here's a welcome home present. Like, here's some like chicken soup, but a border collie version. So that's Celeste and the rabbit she gave my dad as his first minutes after we brought him home. So
so we by the way have again reinvigorated the war of cats and dogs. Savage Scott saying that he's on the cat side. John Doom apparently riding the fence, like.
Yeah, I mean, Scott, I appreciate because if you're living in LA, I think it'd be hard to be a dog owner, like apartment life or whatever, condo life. Definitely hard to have a dog. Although, I mean, having a cannibal is the current beast. He'd be easier in an apartment. He doesn't need that. Like he likes playing outside, but he'll sleep. Border collies, no way. Border collies, they need the energy, the excitement. So like I'll quickly right. Oh, there we go. So John Doom's got the whole arc. So the cool thing about border collies again was this is Dublin, and so not because I have any athletic skill, although my parents thought I was going to be an athlete growing up, and that just was not a thing that was going to happen. But they demand having a job, and Dublin wanted to be a frisbee dog, and so he'd get me up in the middle of the night by like 3 o'clock in the morning, just like dropping a frisbee on my head until I got up and like went in the backyard and played frisbee with him. So over a decade ago at this point, I had to acquiesce. And the coolest thing about Colorado, being the awesome place where I grew up, is that there is a local club here called the Colorado Disc Dogs, and they are an internationally ranked frisbee dog team, and they run events all summer, kind of up and down the state. And so we spent several summers doing the frisbee dog sport thing, and he loved it. And there's a couple different ways you can kind of compete in the sport. You can do routines that are called freestyle, where you put on music and you do a lot of tricks, and the dogs jump off your back and go between your legs. And there's toss and fetch, which is you get more points the further you throw it, but you have a time limit, and the dog has to run there and run back. And then our specialty was just long distance. Like, again, not a very good thrower, but I was such an awful thrower. He was really good at catching the frisbees. Like, he would know, like, oh, there's no consistency here, but if I could just chuck it far enough, he would go and catch it. And so the cool thing is about it was a little 11 years ago this summer, this is the bronze medal we got at nationals for the world qualifiers. We were third in the country at distance for frisbee, and we beat some like professional teams that had sponsorships, and we travel around the country in RVs and do this for a living. So we beat some of the best teams in the world, certainly in America, to qualify to go to Worlds. We came in third, and then the reason is because the conditions that day were actually really shit, and the wind was just very unpredictable. And Dublin was so good at me not having to throw a perfect throw and him being in the same spot all the time. A lot of other teams, like one of the biggest guys, a friend to this day, but he's a professional frisbee sport guy. So he was like, and then the dog he was paired with was like a ringer. It was like a professional whippet. It was a agility whippet. So it wasn't even his dog. He was a professional athlete in the frisbee disc. What do they call ultimate frisbee?
Ultimate frisbee.
And paired with a dog who was already a ringer in the agility and kind of obedience circles. But he is so good with the frisbee that he can put the frisbee in the same spot every time. So the dog can book it out there, knows exactly where to be. Dublin was just like he wouldn't know where the frisbee would go because I had no consistency. But on this day, even with the wind, he was able to track it, and we got within feet of first place, but we got third and qualified. So third in the country, qualified to go to Worlds. Worlds that year was going to be in France, and it would have been a really kind of crappy quarantine situation where I'd have to ship the dog ahead of me several weeks and leave him in quarantine. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. And then he got Celeste pregnant. We had that litter. So it was like, oh, well, I'm not going to be leaving anywhere anytime because I've got a litter of puppies in the ground. But so we didn't go to Worlds to represent the United States, but that was the peak of my athletic career. Was playing,
which is still more than most, and still more than like you. Whenever we talk with like you, or when you and I hang out with Bob, the stories that we all have are just sort of absurd.
Yeah, right.
And we don't share them. Like they're awesome. Like you were one time third in the world or in the U.S.
Yeah,
for,
I know
for frisbee dog competition.
Yeah.
Although when you said frisbee dog, that is not what I had pictured in my head. I was like, wow, you were
throwing
dogs. That's just weird.
That's just cruel.
Now, but your current dog is named. It's named after the great Carthaginian general.
That's true. I mean, I like Silence of the Lambs plenty, but I was not channeling Hannibal Lecter when I named Hannibal. So this is Hannibal. After Dublin passed, I was like, I can't do another border collie right now. There is no way to replace that dog. I will never be that young again. Whatever. Like I don't want to. Yeah. I don't want to put that. That's a very high pedestal. So I really wanted a Bernese Mountain Dog, but the problem with the Berners and having done the whole dog blog ethics thing, I was like, the gene pool is too small. They have too much cancer. They don't live long enough. So I wanted to get a Berner mix, and so I prowled the internet for dog breeders of some repute. Not the like Amish country animal farm kind of factory farm kind of situation. So I finally found a breeder out in West Virginia of all places that had the Hannibal's mother is half Bernese Mountain Dog, half Great Pyrenees, and then the mother's full Berner. And so because those are the two mountain ranges, the Pyrenees and then the Bern is in Switzerland, is in the Alps.
Yeah,
I was like, well, what really ties the Pyrenees and the Alps together? I'm like, I know, like Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca took elephants and conquered, basically went around Italy for just decades, just tearing it up, having fun. And then the Italians couldn't beat him on their soil, so they're just like, well, we're going to send an end run around you and attack your home base, and then you'll have to go home and defend that. So
yep.
So
and then Scipio Africanus takes all of the credit. No one gives credit to my brain just died. The guy who basically played the delay tactic.
Yes.
Refused to meet Hannibal in the field because every Roman general who did got obliterated. And so he invented kiting long before
exactly.
MMOs.
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee,
yeah.
like Muhammad Ali, before, like centuries before Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Cassius Clay. That was we'll just keep him destroying the smaller towns while we rebuild the larger ones.
Mm-hmm.
So So I flew out to West Virginia. I actually flew out to DC. That's a picture of as close as I'll ever get to Washington again. It was kind of during COVID, so there was like no one really there. So I got like the full access to like everything in the Capitol for a day. So that's after I picked him up back in the Capitol, but and then flew him. So he was 20 pounds under the airplane seat when I flew him home, and he has not been 20 pounds ever since. So yeah, he's a year and a half old now. Love him to death. He's sleeping underneath my feet right now. But yeah, that's the current love of my life is Hannibal.
Oh, he's a great dog.
He is super cute.
Now you say that you were not very athletic, but I have been told that you have a very unique athletic skill.
This is true. So I'll segue this into like the baby pictures too, because so this is me and my family and my sister. So in the bottom right, there's me with my favorite picture of all time. Like that's my general attitude on life. The sweatshirt says athlete in training. That's not how any of that went. But yes, my most athletic thing ever is I can juggle and ride a bicycle at the same time, which I just decided to do in like college for fun. And,
which you will now demonstrate
live.
Live.
And I totally promised that I was going to find things to juggle, and like I've got pill bottles now around me. Yes, I will find something.
I was promised chainsaws while you ride a bicycle.
That's true. Where's the bicycle?
The next office hours, we will tune in next time.
Right? I'll actually get if the next time we do like a live destination like cruise or expedition, I will totally do my. I'll have to find a bicycle though. But the
you live in Colorado,
right? A very Colorado thing to do. The folks. So this is my sister Leanne. And so I said before I was an only kid. And you're like, wait a minute, you have a sister. So when she was 6 and I was 2, we lost Leanne to a really rare disorder called aplastic anemia, and they call it an orphan disease because it's so rare. There really isn't a whole lot of like research that goes into it, and there aren't that many people affected. But it's kind of a form of childhood cancer. And at the time, there were only really 2 places in the world that could even do treatment. There was one was in Sloan Kettering, New York, and the other one was in Switzerland. And her doctors didn't think she'd make the flight to Switzerland, and so she was treated in Sloan Kettering. But so that's my lovely sister, and So that's kind of the weird thing about being like the only kid, right? It's like in my elementary school, they used to send home the calendars if you were the oldest and only, because a lot of families would have a bunch of kids in. It's like they wouldn't print 10 calendars for the big Irish or German families that had 10 kids. They send home one, and they send it home with the oldest or only, and it's like, well, I'm neither, but kind of the only now. So that was always a little thing. So that's my awesome sister. And then let's see, I've got other kid stuff too. That's my dad and I being very Colorado. Like we were hipster before it was hipster. I mean, I think my dad's actually wearing my mom's sunglasses there, even because like dad doesn't wear glasses. That's Sweetie. So I was a bear lover before I was a bear lover. In preschool, this right and a ching. That was there's a story behind Sweetie. So Sweetie was like my comfort bear. But that was in the preschool like collective toy bin, and I fell in love with Sweetie and refused to give Sweetie back. So my mom had to go to Kazoo and Company and the Wizard's Chest, and then like Neiman Marcus or whatever, trying to look for a replacement bear and couldn't find one. So basically, we ended up buying like 1 bear at each place, and then gave the preschool like, here's 3 bears to replace Sweetie, so Chris can take Sweetie home.
I will trade you these 3 bears.
Right. That was pretty much it. And that kind of, it's a sort of funny thing there is that kind of started my path for kind of public speaking and speech and debate, because when I was a little kid like that, I had a speech impediment and I still talk too fast. That's something that's still with me, but I spoke too fast and kind of had, a slur. And so what the preschool teacher did was she agreed to give me Sweetie as long as after the weekend I would come back and do like show and tell and talk about my adventures over the weekend with Sweetie. So that's kind of, that put me on the path for, I was a big speech and debate nerd in high school. I was just a big nerd in high school, period. That's me with my grandma at the top. So again, super charismatic. Not a nerd at all.
No.
That's a picture. So I think the picture on the bottom, that's the last time I was without facial hair. I shaved to look presentable because that year, I think I was like junior year in high school, I won the state math contest. And so that was me with my little trophy at the right. I know, total nerd. And on the right, that's me with Eduardo Aracachea. He was our Spanish exchange student. He came when I was in 8th grade, and he was like a junior in high school. And so he was kind of a surrogate brother for me. And that's when he came back to visit years later when I was finally in high school. And so we've stayed lifelong friends. He is Aracachea is a Basque name, so they are he always insisted, I am not Spanish, I am Basque. And so if you don't know the Basque,
yeah, no, that is a very like idiosyncratic and proud group.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. So I mean, being a dumb American before you kind of do the world travel thing, so many places in Europe are very fractionalized, segmented, like separatist. And Spain is definitely one of those. I mean, like, being an American before Eduardo was here, we were stupid. Like when he first got off the plane, we were like, let's go take him to a Mexican restaurant because surely Spanish food and Mexican food have to be at least partially no. There is no through line between those two. And and certainly not Basque food. The Basque are really big on, like, he was a no sauce, which is like pretty much all like South, like Colorado Tex-Mex style Mexican food is very sauce heavy. And he put sauce on nothing. Like he would eat just his steak with salt. But they're big with cattle. Like the bull is kind of a big thing with that culture. His mom actually put together. So the bullfights are such a big part of their culture. The whole kind of country follows the bull breeding houses, kind of like, I don't know, houses in Dune or whatever. Like there's literally these houses that breed the bulls for fighting they have reputations and they have lineages behind their bulls for dozens or hundreds of generations. And part of what she would do is she would produce these gorgeous books that had full color photography of the bulls during each season, and then people would buy these as kind of the commemorating that year of potential bulls.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that was Eduardo. Let's see. So the funny thing is, again, not being no athleticism at all. He was a world-class soccer star, and so when we got to go back to Spain for his wedding in like 2007, he took us to go see. He played while he was here. The championship team, and the championship team it was Czech at the time. It was 75% foreign exchange students. So there was like 3 local kids, and then there was the kid from Brazil, the kid from Spain, the kid from France. Like,
wait a second,
right? So he was totally cheating. But he took us to the Athletic. So Athletic is the Bilbao sports team. And so the funny thing is, I got a picture here. This is me and my cousin Max, and this was an exhibition game or a visiting game between the U.S. men's national soccer team and like Barbados. And it looks like I'm in American getup, but the red and white vertical stripes are actually the Athletic uniform for the Bilbao team. And the funny thing about this game is that because Max and I got there an hour early, and like I'm early for nothing. We got prime seating right in the middle of the fan, like the actual traveling U.S. men's national team fan club. And so they filmed a promo that they used for the rest of like the next 2 years from that game of me and my cousin like yelling. So like my fat face in not an American outfit, but it looks American enough because it's red and white stripes. It was featured on like national television for like to promote the U.S. men's national team. Because we're just sitting there like yelling our whatever off. It's really kind of funny. So that's
Cripwright wants to know: do you know Ted Lasso?
So I have not watched enough. I need to. I've heard it's like a feel good kind of fun show. But last thing I watched from Apple TV was SEE, which is like Home with Our Blind. So good.
Now we switch. I'll watch C.
Yes.
You watch Ted Lasso, and we'll compare notes.
We will meet back in the middle. How many seasons is Lasso up to now? You know,
it's 3 and done.
Oh, okay, good. So same with C. C is 3 and done. So we will powwow Chris Valentine, and we will have the do you watch? We'll have the recap. Like for folks that don't know, like JM and I, we do movie night. Like
we do movie night.
Like, we need to watch these certain things.
It's on hold right now because we're playing Necessary Evil. I mean, Chris is. I've got people visiting, so I'm out for this week and next week. But then I will be back with my Super Sorcerer.
Yes. Yeah, C is pretty good. It's good. I got John Doom onto it. I know John Doom is on seen at least the first episode of C.
So as I understand it, I have not seen C. Neither has Cripwright, but John Doom has saw C.
He saw C. Did you see Saw 2?
Yeah.
Severance. That sounds good. I've not seen Severance. And then
I've heard
there's the other
Severance
one too. That's like the other HBO one where it's like it also ends in ENCE. Like it's like the Inheritance one where like there's the corporate.
Oh yeah.
I haven't seen that either, but
yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Yes.
Because it's got a cult.
Inheritance, maybe it's called.
Succession.
Succession.
There we go.
It. Never mind. It's not ends in ENCE. It ends in ION. Okay.
Cripwright's got us. So you mentioned the world traveling thing, and you have done a lot of traveling. But there was a story that you shared with me as we were kind of in another meeting. So you did a tour. You saw a lot of Europe. You ended up going through Egypt, and then you were denied entry in the Holy Land because of lack of pants.
This is true. I did get in trouble for no pants.
Yeah.
So the being the nerd I was in middle school, middle school is kind of when I turned on the academics thing, and my dad made a bet with me at the beginning of 8th grade. He's like, if you get honor roll all through 8th grade, if you ace 8th grade, I'll take you wherever in the world you want to go. Thinking like Disneyland, and so aced 8th grade. And it's like spring of 8th grade year, and the dad's like, well, where do you want to go? I got to start planning, the trip, whatever. And I said Egypt, and we were both kind of like, one of the cool things I think that I've inherited from my family is the gold bug. Like we've gone on treasure hunts and gone to see like in Southern California, there's a mountain range called the Sangre de Cristos, and there's this Cabo de Oro, which is the Cave of Gold, where on the back entry of the cave, and then the cave drops down hundreds of feet, but on the back entry, there's this like red Spanish cross that was painted there by conquistadors. And there was always rumors there was like gold hidden there. So that was one of the things when I was a little kid, my dad took me up there to go do. And so we always wanted to go to Egypt and just like, be little Indiana Jones wannabes. But at the time you couldn't fly directly to Egypt. You had to get a visa from a neighboring country first. And so dad cashed in a bunch of frequent flyer miles, and we went from we flew on SAS, Scandinavian Airlines, wonderful airline. They had back at the time, you didn't have personal screens, but they had personal VHS players that were like this big. You put a VHS in and you could watch. I thought that was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. So we flew from Newark, New Jersey, which is like the armpit of America, to Stockholm, Sweden, to Copenhagen, Denmark, to Tel Aviv, and we had to stay in Israel for about 5 days to get the visa go through, and that was a whole scary process. We had to go get pictures in country, and then give our passports and a bunch of money to the Egyptian consulate, which was, you'd think you'd be walking into a building with doors and glass and talking to a human. No, our cab driver took us to a seedy part of town. He stopped in the middle of a bazaar. He says, go down that alley, third door on the left, knock first. The third door on the left was literally one of those, I've never seen one in real life except this one, but a iron door with a little sliding peephole that was about yay big. You knock, a guy opens it up, is not speaking English, does not speak English. We're is this the passport for Egypt? And we mumble our way through enough where we put the money and our passports in, and the guy is come back in 3 days. It's this is the weirdest thing ever. So we decided to go. We did the sightseeing in Jerusalem while we were there, and so the crazy thing about some of the temples and the churches and the cathedrals, whatever, in Israel is Christianity is definitely third on the list of like importance. Like you could definitely tell there's like, the Muslim representation is very high and the Jewish representation is very high. But in like the Christians and all the little divisions that they're in are like definitely third on the totem pole. And a lot of it's not really because of Muslim or Jewish fault. It's much more there's so many like divisions that are all fighting over these holy monuments, which are holy to all of them. So one of the places, I think it's at the Holy Sepulchre. There's one is like there is the reputed birthplace of Jesus where you get to go and like there's this little cube and they have all this kind of stuff on it, and like inside the cube, there's the bottom of the cube is owned by like the Russian Coptics, and then the Russian Orthodox. And then this side of the cube is like the Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, then the Greek Orthodox, and then like the Protestants, and then the Catholics. And it's really kind of funny. But one of the sacred locations to go see was controlled by the Greek Orthodox, and they had a very strict dress policy for men. You had to have pants, and it was super hot, and it was summer, and we're in the middle of the desert, and I had shorts on, and so my dad was wearing pants, so he got in line to go see it, and the only thing we had extra clothing was like my dad had a thin members only jacket to like cover up from the sun, and so I tried putting those on like pants, like you put your legs through the holes and then zip it up or whatever, and we were kind of staying close and waddling in line, and they let my dad go through, and like I was very first in the next group, and then the Greek Orthodox priest like looked me up and down and was like, I'm sorry, son, nope, those are not pants. And I did not get to see the Holy of Holies. I got to look through a little window on the outside. But yes, they were very strict, and I wish there was a picture of me trying to wear
a members only jacket.
Members only jacket, but that was an amazing trip of a lifetime. Like Egypt was super fantastic. The Holy Land again, like the like in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, like there's a tower, a bell tower, and like when we were there, early 90s, whatever it would have been, there was scaffolding that was put up there decades before, and you could just see that there was like inches of dust on it, but none of the work had been done. It was kind of the same thing, like infighting between whatever groups, the modern hospitalers and then whoever else was like owned that little section of that temple, couldn't agree on getting the work done. So the scaffolding was up there forever. There was like, I think it's gone now and they don't know where it went, but for the longest time on the outside of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, there was a stool that was up on the second level. It was like there for over 100 years, because we have like, I think David, is it John David? It was a guy who kind of an Englishman who toured the Middle East, I think during the 1800s. It wasn't Jacques Louis David, but there was, he did these lithographs that are kind of famous, and it appears in one of his lithographs, so we know it was at least there then. But basically, this stool is up there that no one has ever moved because they can't agree on who owns it and who needs to move it, and so like all those little kind of touches on history things are kind of cool. So,
all right, so we're almost at our hour, and there's a story I really want you to share, and this is not one that we have planned, so this is extemporaneous. Because you mentioned being bit by the gold bug, and you have a love of math and science, but you also have a love of like puzzles and cryptography. Now, there was a series that had hidden messages in it that you actually corrected and did not win the prize.
Oh God, yes.
And so I want you to share this story, because this is my favorite Landauer story.
So everybody's heard of Dan Brown and the Da Vinci Code. And so I have the gold bug in the family. I definitely want to pull one of these off on a large scale one of these days. There's some other history here, but one of the cool things was I was home from college when Dan Brown was first coming out with the Da Vinci Code, and he was going around the country doing his book tour, kind of to introduce the thing. And my mom had taken me down to the Tattered Cover Bookstore, which is one of the most amazing covers.
A great bookstore in Denver. Yeah.
Right. It's just like, it's amazing. It is floors and floors of books. And so I was there, I think I was like, flitzing around the history section or the art section, kind of, and I overhear this guy talking about secret codes in books and the Knights Templar and burying codes and deciphering art and all this kind of stuff. So I waddle over, and there's just this little crowd, maybe 15 people sitting there, and they've got a stack of his books right behind where everyone's sitting, so you can buy one, pick one up, and buy it. And assuming that he's going to come sit down at the table and sign them. So, I mean, I just pick one of them up, because he's not there to manage. He wasn't a big star at this point. Like he didn't have people with him. He was doing the like suitcase, that tour. So I pick up the book and I'm thumbing through it, and he's talking about codes. And so I notice I read the inside dust jacket, and notice like what with these 3 or 4 letters, or like someone on the typography screwed up here. Like, why are these letters bolded? And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. They're like, wait, that spells hope. What? Oh, there's something here. Okay. So I go find my mom, get her to give me a pen and an envelope, and come back and sit down and then look in the front dust jacket, and then on the outside and all the thing. And so between the 2 inner flaps in the back, I find this secret message, and so I was super excited. I'm like, oh, I found a secret here. This is really cool. So Dan starts taking questions, and people have, a couple of questions. I'm like, I'm sitting there with my hand up, and I'm like super excited. He finally calls on me, and I blurt out, "Is there no help for the widow's son?" And that's what the message that was encoded on the dust jacket was. And he freaks out. He just starts like, "Oh my God!" It's like, super excited. Like, why did you say that to me? And I said, "Well, I found it encoded in your book." And so the cool thing, so he gave me a copy of his book, and he signed the front with the congratulations of being the first person to find the code in my book, and whatever, something Dan Brown. And so it turned out there were like 6 or 7 more codes hidden in the book, and I was the first person to find all 7 of them, and I got in touch with him because at the time his email address was super easy. It was like dan@danbrown.com or whatever.
Yeah.
Not anymore. But I pinged him, and I found mistakes in it. Like one of the ones, like it gave you a coordinates, and it was like the coordinates were like to a field in Virginia somewhere, and I submitted that as the answer, and he's like, "No, that's not right." And I'm like, "How can that not be right?" And like at the time on the internet, like back in the old days, like I think Alta Vista was still like the hotness back then. I mean, Google wasn't really the thing yet. I had found that like apparently there was some kind of memorial statue in this field, otherwise cornfield or whatever, or tobacco field or whatever they grow in Virginia. So I thought it must be the statue of this dude. And Dan kept insisting that nope, that's not it. No, that's not it. And so eventually I discovered one perfect degree north was the CIA headquarters and the Kryptos statue. There's outside of CIA headquarters, there's this art installation that is a encoded message. And so that was the right answer. And he's like, "Oops, sorry, I guess we got it wrong in the encoding." But so I, kept in touch with Dan, but like I had solved all the puzzles, was really happy with myself. And then like 6 months later, they come out with a national advertising campaign where they gave away a full paid trip to Italy to visit all the spots that were mentioned in the Da Vinci Code. If you found and solved all the riddles, except they basically, as part of the web interface to go solve it, they led you right to all of them and gave you hints on all of them. And I didn't have any of that. So some other, and I could only enter once. They give us 1 entry per person.
Yeah.
So sad to say, my 1 entry did not get handpicked amongst the thousands of people. And that's another thing too. Is like I had already advertised all the solutions online at that point and on my little blog. And so, yeah, I didn't get to win the Dan Brown thing, but it wasn't right. I was definitely robbed. But it did get me my first job in the gaming industry, crazy enough. So as part of the Dan Brown thing, later, a year or two later, a guy came out, Michael Stather came out with this book called A Treasures Trove. And this was a book in the spirit of The Secret and some other kind of typically British treasure hunts. And these British treasure hunts would be an artist who would create a very colorful, whimsical art book, and then would encode some messages in that art book to find real buried treasure that they would go out and bury. So Michael Stather was like a tech nerd. He and his wife, did some like banking software, made a couple million in Silicon Valley, and he wanted to produce a book like that. So he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on these gorgeous, like Fabergé style paved, like gold and jeweled insect jewels. So like there was like a butterfly and a ladybug and a spider and because he was putting so much cha-ching bling behind the campaign, it really took off. He got on Good Morning America, and so I and some other treasure hunters founded a website called 12 with an extra E in it, TWELEVE, to solve the puzzles in this book. And it's defunct now, but the 10 years ago it was all the hotness. And I think of the 12 treasures that were found, 11 people who found them were from our website. I was close on one. I was like 2 hours away when I got a call saying that people beat you to it. It's been discovered. But so I didn't win any of them. But because I was co-founder of that website, and between kind of the big discoveries of what was in that treasure hunt, I started writing my own puzzles, and we do weekly kind of the puzzles on the site. And an executive from EA, Electronic Arts, was also a treasure hunter on that site. And he really liked the puzzles I was doing, so he paid me to do a puzzle for Electronic Arts' Medal of Honor European Assault. And so this was the year. So I did the puzzle. They loved it. And then they wanted me to do another one for E3 that year. And so the payment I got, the first payment was like a huge library of Electronic Arts games. And I think I kept one and then sent the other like 50 games over to Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan because the war was going on at that time. And one of the guys who was on the website was a bronze star, and he was at Bagram. So I sent that over there with a donated Xbox, so those guys could play all that library. And the guy who hired me is like, he saw that and he's like, well, really appreciate that. I thought when you said you wanted a big library of EA games, you were just going to keep them all for yourself or sell on eBay. So he's like, how about for your payment for your next one? We'll fly you out to E3 and you can come hang out at our big booth and all this kind of stuff. And so the one for E3, there was a puzzle in Medal of Honor where if you played it on the very hardest difficulty level, at the very end of it, it would flash up a screen that would give you the puzzle. And Electronic Arts threw like $10,000 behind it. No one solved it during the solve period, but I got to go to E3, and this was the year Electronic Arts spent between $25 and $50 million on their booth. They had a 3D surround sound, elevated movie screens, and then the floor had hydraulics, and it was just like there was a whole lot of money. And the funny thing is the day I got there, the guy who had hired me got poached by Vivendi, which was another gaming company. So he wasn't even there to greet me. I had no one to supervise me. I just had my staff cert and staff access to E3. And so I just got to tool around with my best friend from college. And that was the year like Wind Waker played and SOCOM was there. And like all the next generation, the Xbox 360, the PS3 or whatever, they were all like debuting that year. And so we just had a lot of fun with like our staff badges hanging out. But that was, getting hired by Electronic Arts and then doing the puzzle was kind of the, my first paying gig in gaming. So
that's awesome. Well, cool. Well, hey, we're at an hour. Now you know more about Landauer than you did when you started. I assume many of you are writing much of this down for the test that will be coming later.
Right. So you will be quizzed.
You will be quizzed. Good luck. Those of you who get below a 40% will be taken out and executed. So good luck to anyone who's actually taking the test. And we'll be back, I think, next week with more office hours. I don't know. I'm just filling in as the adorable host, which is
you normally did a good job, Jam.
Yeah, thank you.
You can be host anytime you want, buddy.
Awesome. I'm in. And for those of you following along at home, once we're back to watching things, I think our next thing that we're doing on movie night will be The Ninth Gate.
We're doing that. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Ninth Gate is, you haven't seen it. It's a Roman Polanski movie with Johnny Depp. Oh, so good.
Yeah. And half of a really good book. The Club Dumas.
Yes.
That book, I mean, right on line with and a guest appearance by Hannibal at the end. This is.
So it's crazy. If you go back a year to one of our campaigns, I think it's the fantasy campaign, YouTube, you can see him as a puppy in my lap on that. Hi, baby. Yeah. So he's grown a little bit. and I've shrunk a little bit, so that's good. But the yes, Club Dumas, awesome.
What a great book. And I mean, right up there with the Dan Brown sort of mystery genre.
Love of books.
Yeah, I remember watching that movie. I think I told you the story. I watched that movie and I turned to my best friend. He's like, "What'd you think?" I'm like, "I feel like it's almost like someone pulled a thread out of another story and said, this is the whole story." And we did some research and I was like, well, I'm going to go buy this book. And just delightful. I ended up using the wood cuttings, if you guys know anything about the movies, in a role-playing game, because that was just such a great through line.
Right, and we need to do that. So the reason we're watching this again, because we totally want to bring that ethic into the Renaissance game we're doing. That's just like a love letter to books and all that stuff.
Yeah, we're definitely doing this game. It's going to be awesome.
I have a bug up my whatever about in high school. I was told that Dumas was not literature, that it was like pop fiction.
What?
And I was like, how do you deny one of the greatest authors, let alone one of the quintessential Black authors of history, his rightful place as a literature icon? And the professor, they weren't a doctor, I don't think. They didn't even realize that like Dumas was wasn't white.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, you don't even know. Like, your opinion does not matter. It's like, I wanted to do Dumas for like, we had to do like Black authors. I was like, oh my god, I love Dumas. Let's do this.
Yeah,
so I did like Harlan Ellison instead, or Ellison instead. But anyways, Dumas. I love.
Yeah,
it,
I love Count of Monte Cristo. I reread not too much, just the right amount, but like every 2 or 3 years. I get.
It's long. He was not brief. He got paid by the word, and he knew it, so he was not.
Yeah, I'm reading Les Miserables now, not Dumas, obviously, but I have a friend who huge Les Mis fan. I'm a huge Count of Monte Cristo fan, and he's like, Dumas is overwordy and none of his stuff ties together. And I'm like reading Les Mis. I'm like, dude, this guy is just as wordy. Like he was being like, well, France is a character. I'm like, France is a character for Dumas as well.
100%. Strong female characters all over it.
Yep.
Anyway, Scott, enjoy Alaska, sir. I saw Scott commented.
Yeah.
Scott's going to Alaska. I'm jealous.
That's awesome. Enjoy. All right,
guys, play some Savage Worlds this weekend.
That's right. Go out and get some Savage Worlds in. I steal your sign off because that's what I use now on the what I do. Savage Universe. I know what I do here.
Now I'm hungry. Now I want a Monte Cristo.
I know. All right,
John, you know we're doing low carb, sir. We cannot do a Monte Cristo. We can definitely do the rest of it though.
Scott's
he's in the air. That is some technology right there.
That's awesome.
Now we can say that we were on an airline, sir. We were featured flight to Alaska.
Yeah, we are
on the Landauer show.
On the air. Yeah.
How about a wrap? Ooh, a wrap. The show's a wrap. We're gonna eat a wrap. That's
all right.
That's good. I love the puns. Cheers, folks.
See you guys. Have a good one.